So in what was really just a fantastic fight to watch. Just a good fight overall. Every round, very much a tit for tat round. Hiroto Kyoguchi manages to dethrone Jose Argumedo as the IBF Minimumweight Champion, 105-pound champion, and won it by a unanimous decision. A very competitive, close-fought decision. Incidentally, I actually had Jose Argumedo winning this fight. I thought that he really deserved to edge it out, especially in the championship rounds, which I guess will lead me into my kind of round by round of the fight. First round, Argumedo came out, swinging fast and furious as he's prone to do, as he's known to do. He comes from the style of boxing of like a Ricardo Mayorga, Sakio Bika, Marcos Maidana, where he's just swinging at all angles, improvising as he goes along. Doesn't really have a tell. He doesn't really have like those moments where it's like you could really time him and land in between those kind of free swings. He looks wild, especially on tape. The thing is, being able to time him is a lot easier said than done, just because of the fact that he's all over the place. And the thing is, it's not just the fact that he's moving his hands so freely, it's the fact that he's moving his head and his body, his entire torso and everything, just freely as well. It's like almost like there's, like if you were playing a video game and you have separate controls for your head, your torso, and your hand, each hand. So it's like everything is moving in its own direction, like all crazy. And so it actually makes him fairly defensively sound. Makes him really a very tough fighter to be able to catch cleanly. And Kyoguchi, especially early on, was having a very difficult time catching him. There was a couple of notable punches in the first round. I did see a good one too, and a couple of fairly good body shots. But overall, it was pretty much Argumedo's round. He was controlling the pace. Kyoguchi was trying to kind of throw with him and try to time him, catch him in between those wild swings, but as wild as they look, Argumedo kind of arcs them in a way that they almost always are landing pretty cleanly, and they're really clean scoring blows, as opposed to like a Bika, Maidana, Mayorga, where a lot of times like the punches are kind of like almost stray to the back of you, where like they might kind of hit you, clip you in the back of the head, might accidentally rabbit punch you, might hit you like in the kidneys or what have you. Argumedo's punches are virtually 99% of the time hitting you on the front side of your body. And he was just doing really good work. Argumedo, like in the midst of those swings too, sometimes he'll wind up turning southpaw, and he actually boxes just as good as a southpaw as he does as an orthodox fighter. It's almost like just a mirror image of himself, and he'll kind of continue his free swinging as a southpaw until he kind of almost forces himself back into an orthodox stance in one of like the big swings from his backhand, from his left hand in that case. He has a really solid jab too. He was sticking the jab out there. The thing is, his hands are quick enough that it makes it really difficult to be able to time him and throw with him, because a lot of times when you're trying to time him with that one shot, he'll be throwing 2 or 3 at you, and he'll be able to just launch him off and get him back to in a defensive position enough to be able to either deflect or block him, or at the very least take some of the steam off of the punches if some of your glove happens to land on him. Second round, I thought Kyoguchi did a little bit better. I saw a really good 1-2 and a good body shot. It was another kind of a toss-up round though. I thought that Argumedo could have potentially won it, but I thought that Kyoguchi managed to edge it. I think that his punches were a bit sharper. He did snap Argumedo's head back a couple of times, which Argumedo didn't quite do against Kyoguchi. Towards the end of the round, though, you could see that the right side of his face started to swell up a little bit, just below his eye, like where his cheekbone was. And that turned out to be, I think, something that kind of harmed him in the fight a little bit later, but I'll get to that. Third round and the fourth round, I thought Argumedo kind of came back really nicely and was doing a lot of just making himself just a difficult target. He was switching between orthodox and southpaw. He was throwing at all angles, like as I said before. A lot of these rounds were very similar to a lot of the other rounds. It wasn't until about the 6th towards like the 10th round where things started to get a little bit different. They started wrestling a little bit more. But like I said, I'll get to that. Argumedo was just very difficult target to hit, was a little bit quicker on the draw. Kyoguchi, I think, was waiting a little bit too long. But also, even when he was kind of picking his spots, he wasn't picking quite the right spots, because a lot of times there would be moments where each of them would reset their feet and Argumedo would continue throwing. Argumedo's the type of fighter where it's like, even when he's off balance, he'll keep throwing at you until he's basically right back on balance. And so if you're trying to reset your feet, he's not bothering to reset his feet. He's throwing right at you. So, he could catch you and maybe clip you out of position and potentially knock you off balance, for a scoring blow. The fifth round, I thought Kyoguchi probably did his best in terms of starting to go down to the body a bit more. Because he was having a very tough time hitting Argumedo to the head. He started to focus a little bit more to the body, and I think that started to pay a little bit of dividends for him in the fifth round, going into from the mid into the late rounds. Started getting a little bit dirty as well, and that swelling below Kyoguchi's right eye started to become a lot more pronounced, and you'd eventually see in the aftermath of the fight, it looks like Argumedo might have broken Kyoguchi's cheekbone, either like his cheekbone or maybe like the bottom side of his orbital, or possibly both. I don't know. It looked like there was definitely a fracture there, because if you look at the pictures of the picture of Kyoguchi, that Kyoguchi actually even posted on his Twitter, like the entire right side of his face is swollen up like crazy. Sixth round, I thought Argumedo managed to nick it. I thought he managed to just kind of evenly fought round, just barely managed to get it. Seventh round was another round that was pretty close. I thought Kyoguchi edged it. And see, in the sixth and the seventh round was where it started to get a little bit gritty, a little bit dirty on the inside, where they were kind of wrestling with each other, kind of throwing each other down, pushing each other. I think Kyoguchi tended to win that battle a bit more often, though. Kyoguchi, I think, is slightly taller. I think he's listed at 5'3.5", whereas Argumedo is listed at 5'3". And Kyoguchi, to me, looks like the slightly bigger man. Like, Argumedo looks like a true strawweight. Like, he looks like a guy that basically walks around below 110 pounds. So making 105 is a piece of cake for him, Like, it's literally a piece of cake for him. Like, he just has to skip a piece of cake and he'll make 105 pounds. Whereas Kyoguchi, he's a guy that, in his prime self, is able to make 105, but he definitely is probably fiending for a little bit of sustenance right afterwards. He's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see at 108 at some point in the near future. Trying to kind of match some of his peers in that regard and trying to become like a multi-weight champion. Some of his peers out of Japan and such. But getting back to the fight. Eighth round, I thought was Kyoguchi's best round up until that point. Was definitely landing clearly. I think that Argumedo was starting to tire a little bit. I think the body work from Kyoguchi was starting to pay real dividends in this round. Argumedo definitely seemed a little bit easier to predict. His punch output had seemed to kind of drop quite a bit in the eighth round, which allowed Kyoguchi to get off just the cleaner shots, the sharper and the more pronounced shots. I think that overall, power-wise, between the two of them, Kyoguchi had a little bit more snap and power in his shots as compared to Argumedo, who was really just a terror in terms of speed and volume. Where Argumedo's game in this fight was speed and volume. Kyoguchi's was sharpness and power, and the pop and the snap of the punches. Ninth round was another Kyoguchi round, but this time it was very even all the way up until I think it was about 2 minutes into the round, or maybe a minute and a half into the round, where Kyoguchi managed to land a clean left hook to the liver area of Argumedo, and then immediately afterwards, as the two of them both kind of reset their feet and they both launched another punch, Argumedo's punch to the head missed, but Kyoguchi's right hand to basically the solar plexus landed, and that definitely buckled over Argumedo. I mean, Argumedo was actually showing some pretty good grit to not completely buckle over, but you could tell that he was definitely hurt because his stance kind of was a little bit more pronounced in how much he was hunched over. And Kyoguchi followed up in pretty fine fashion, landed a few more clean shots. Argumedo wasn't going anywhere though at first, but eventually he managed to land another left hook and drop Argumedo, and the left hook was actually to the chin this time. And Argumedo just kind of fell back. He basically caught Argumedo in one of those moments where Argumedo's feet wasn't actually completely set. Argumedo was almost like somewhat on his heels, caught him with a left hook, boom, dropped Argumedo. And in the follow-up, he was looking to try and finish up on Argumedo, but Argumedo showed that he still had a lot of liveliness to him, that he wasn't going to be taken out by one single punch. Kyoguchi was going to have to definitely beat the fight out of him. So that was a great round for Kyoguchi, 10-8 round for him. The 10th and 11th and 12th round was a little bit more of the same, a lot of grittiness, a lot of tit-for-tat action between the two of them. But I actually wound up edging all three of those rounds to Argumedo. I could see maybe giving Kyoguchi the 10th, possibly the 11th, but I thought that the 12th round was definitely an Argumedo round. I thought Argumedo had a strong argument in the 10th and the 11th as well, though. And he came back in fine fashion, and it seemed like at that point, even though Kyoguchi was still trying to kind of muscle Argumedo around, kind of wrestle him and stuff, Argumedo was able to deal with that a little bit better, and was able to land some good shots in the midst of that. So actually, on my scorecard, as I mentioned earlier, I thought Argumedo edged it. I thought he won enough rounds, 7 rounds to 5, to be able to edge it, even with the extra point deducted from the 9th round knockdown. In the 12th round, Kyoguchi actually went down a couple of times, but they were from Argumedo would land a punch, and then he would kind of push him down afterwards. So you can't really count those as knockdowns, and the ref, to his credit, didn't do that. He didn't really deserve to get knockdown scored for him necessarily. But I mean, overall, I'm not necessarily mad with Kyoguchi actually winning the fight. But I think that the scores were a little bit generous to him. I saw 116 to 111 on one card, so that's 8 rounds. Actually, that's 9 rounds to 3, and then 115 to 112 on the other 2, which is 8 rounds to 4. And I could see that. I could see 8 rounds to 4 for Kyoguchi, but to me, that's about as generous as you can get with Kyoguchi, as while still being within the realm of reality as to what happened in the fight. I thought it was a close-fought fight. To me, a decision either way, I'm not really mad at. But I think that, in this case, this is one of those cases where I think that, crowd noise might have had a little bit to do with it, because in the midst of them throwing a lot of those punches, a lot of those flurries and stuff, I think that, the crowd going hella hype for Kyoguchi, whereas when Argumedo would land, have a lot of instances of clean shots, there was a lot of silence from the crowd, which I think in itself kind of speaks volumes, since, with a Japanese fighter fighting in Japan, a Tokyo fighter no less, fighting in Tokyo for Kyoguchi, it plays a big role, and it shows that if the crowd isn't quite as excited, maybe that means Argumedo is actually doing a little bit better work than somebody might necessarily be giving him credit for there in the audience. Funny enough, actually, they even showed Nonito Donaire was in the audience there. He mentioned a couple of things. And of course, some of the Japanese boxing luminaries were there. Hozumi Hasagawa, Shinsuke Yamanaka, some of the top-level fighters of today and yesteryear. But overall, good win for Kyoguchi. To me, I want to see a rematch. To me, this was a great fight. And honestly, based off of this fight, I think I might be willing to rank Kyoguchi just slightly ahead of Wenham and Ayoten. I thought he did a pretty solid job, or at the very least, maybe rank him and Argumedo both ahead of Wenham and Ayoten. Just the level of ability they showed in this fight, I think, was just a slight tick above where Wenham and Ayoten, the WBC champ, and Nakatsuki Freshman, the WBA champ, have been showing, particularly in their recent fights. So Tatsuya Fukuhara, WBO champion, I clearly rate as the lowest of the champions as for now. As for going back to Kyoguchi, though, to me, like I said before, I'd like to see a rematch, him and Argumedo. This wasn't a mandatory match as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. It was actually an optional defense for Argumedo, but I mean he took it. He stepped up to the plate against the guy that had been showing himself to be a knockout artist up until now, 8-0 with 6 knockouts. And I mean, honestly, I thought Argumedo deserved the nod. To me, Argumedo is very live against any of the other champions too. So even if he didn't get a shot right back at his IBF title, which would be unfortunate considering, he's promoted by Canelo Promotions, so you'd think that they might be able to have had some clout in order to get some sort of rematch clause in there, or at the very least be able to negotiate right back on the table for one. I think Argumedo could wind up being another champion once again before the year's out, very easily. In terms of the rankings, though, top-ranked IBF fighter is actually Carlos Buitrago, former fighter that former rival of Nakatsuki Freshmart. Actually fought Freshmart twice. Gave him a very, very close fight that he arguably deserved to win in the first fight. Lost more clearly in the second fight. I think he'd be a really solid test for Kyoguchi. I would favor Kyoguchi, though, considering the fact that he did appear to tire out a bit in the second half of the second fight against Freshmart. But I mean, like I said, this was a really good fight. Good one for Kyoguchi. Manages to become the fastest fighter from pro debut to world champion in Japanese boxing history, only 17 months. 23 years of age. Who knows if he'll stay, how long he'll stay around at 105, if he'll try to make some matchups up at higher in weight against some of the other Japanese boxers. Japan now has a whole lot of world champions, man. They have, what is it now, 10 or 11 world champs now, something of the sort. But I mean, just fantastic win for Kyoguchi, making a name for himself, and that's all I got for this.